Please, all of you, follow my thoughts, going 80 years back. In particular, the 23rd of November 1943, it was dark night, it was windy, it was freezingly cold when my mother and I arrived at Ravensbrück with 8 other Danish Jews. My mother was 26 years old, I was 2 years old. We were placed on a bench in the utility building all night. The building is not here anymore, but you can see, so to say, traces of it if you go on your right when you enter the main entrance. My mother was scared to death when she saw a number of persons waiting to get into a shower room. It was not a gas chamber, what she feared. She couldn't figure out if it were men or women, as they were naked and shaved. That was our meeting with Ravensbrück. A prisoner asked her about the war and if it was about to end. My mother's reply was not positive. She, on her part, asked the other prisoner where we were. Her reply was definitely not positive either. She said, "This is hell." The next morning, we were taken across the tall area and into the bunker. You can see probably afterwards. She saw women in thin clothes, barefooted, women searching waste baskets for food. They were living corpses. That was our first impression of Ravensbrück. Not an extermination camp, but a forced labor camp. But let us call it what it really was. It was the slow death camp. A camp where women and children were mercifully murdered and used for meaningless medical experiments. As I said, we were taken into the bunker. Why were we confined? Was my mother a criminal? No. Had she been fighting the Nazis in the Danish resistance movement? No. We were confined because we were Jews. And according to Nazi racial ideology, subhuman and worth nothing. However, Ravensbrück was not a camp for Jews. In October 1942, Himmler decided that Ravensbrück should be Judenfrei and the Jewish prisoners were deported to Auschwitz. That we, 10 Danish women and children, were deported to Ravensbrück was most likely only meant to be a short stopover before being deported further on to Jahrestag. It was a relatively short stopover for 8 of our group, but not for me and not for my mother. Our imprisonment in this camp lasted for almost half a year. I got seriously ill with diphtheria and was placed into the rear, and during many weeks, most of the time isolated in the bottom of the bunker, my mother had no idea what disease I suffered from, if I was treated, if I was still alive. Around the 1st of February 1944, I got back to her in the bunker. I was still ill and almost immediately infected her with diphtheria. About what happened during those 6 weeks, she had no idea, and neither did I, until a couple of years ago, when I almost by chance came across a passage in one of Jahrestag's books about the camp. And I quote from one of her books and add a sentence from another of her books. Hilda had installed me, writes Jahrestag, in a bed opposite her own. Between the 2 beds, she had placed a little boy of 2.5 years who had diphtheria. A beautiful little boy a beautiful little Danish boy. Hilda took care of the little boy who called her aunt. He was more than cute. He was pretty. He could walk. A wonderful little boy of 2.5 years. So pretty and cute that Dr. Rede, who was the SS doctor of the Rede, one day gave him an apple. A week later, I saw Dr. Rede with tenderness take this little boy up on his lap as he said, "He is cured. We can send him to Auschwitz." And Germain Tillon continues, from where he did not come back. It's completely incomprehensible. He gives the little boy an apple and then sends him to Auschwitz. I can still imagine the movement with which he has taken this little child on his lap. I was 2 meters from him. I clearly remember that. Everybody knew what Auschwitz meant. Most likely, my life was saved by the mentioned Czech prisoner Hilda Senkova. She probably got me out of the Rede and back to my mother in the bunker in time, and then avoiding me being sent with the biggest black transport from Ravensbrück to Auschwitz. According to Germain Tillon, my name was on the list with names of those who were destined to that transport. My mother never talked to me or said anything about Ravensbrück. Only once. She was in hospital, she was ill, had had a heart operation, and I had to feed her. And then she said, "Now you are feeding me as I fed you in Ravensbrück." A few days later, she passed away. That were her last words. As we are marking the liberation of the camp today, let me take the opportunity also to mention the Swede John Bengtsson. He was the driver of one of the white buses that commuted to pick up prisoners from Ravensbrück when the camp was liberated 78 years ago. He said that it was one of the worst things he had been through. He says that he drove into the roll call square and saw in the background a wood pile, 75 to 100 meters long and a few meters high. We thought it was firewood, he said. But it was the bodies of women stacked all the way to the crematorium. We drove, he tells, back and forth between Ravensbrück and a Danish water town for a whole week. We drove day and night and took pills to stay awake. But we were red-eyed. But we did not give up. We should today also honor him and all the rescuers of the white buses. That was 78 years ago. It's rather obvious why I'm here today. To honor the memory of my mother, as well as the women and children who were killed here. And also the women and children who survived the imprisonment and suffered while they were here, and were left with mental and physical scars for the rest of their lives. With a few exceptions, their name is to me, and that is an important point. Let us not forget that all prisoners, the thousands, the 10,000s, they all had names. Many have perhaps also relatives who could honor their memory. But let's face it, most relatives have passed away because of the many years that have passed. And for natural reasons, we few survivors will not be here many more years. But we still have our children and our grandchildren, for whom the memory of the murders and atrocities of this place is still alive. But when we survivors and our children and grandchildren are not here anymore, when more personal memories are faded away, what then? How is the memory anyway kept alive? Or rather, what should future generations learn from it? We should remember Primo Levi's words, "It has happened, and therefore it can happen again." I want to use this occasion to express my appreciation of the efforts of the director of Ravensbrück, Andrea Genest, her predecessor Insa Eschenbach, and all their staff, as well as the president of the International Ravensbrück Committee, Ambra Laurenzi, and the Secretary General, Janine Bouchard, for all their effort in keeping this place as a memorial worth visiting. A memorial which gives an impression and feeling of the atrocities that took place here during the darkest period of the 20th century. It is a place for reflection and contemplation. Ravensbrück should not just be for future generations a place with exhibition of objects. It should be a place where they get a deep understanding and even small discriminatory words in the 19th and 20s, in particular in the first place against Jews, led to a terrible ending, a part of which we are reminded about in this camp. We and the generations after us should in this concentration camp and all the other camps be reminded that we should never cease to fight against all kinds of racism, anti-Semitism, and abroad. We should be reminded that it's essential to fight for life over death, love over hate, peace over violence and terror, and that this battle needs to be fought in every generation.